So over-harvesting, due to our growth in population and all the things we talked about last chapter, is also leading to extinction and loss of biodiversity. Um, because we're removing species at faster rates than they can reproduce, right? So same thing with resources. They can replenish, but if we take them out faster than they can reproduce, then we are leading to extinction. So valuable trees like teak and mahogany are disappearing quickly because we use those for furniture and for other things like that, and trees take decades to grow. Gorillas and other primates are being killed for bushmeat and could face extinction. Many ocean fish stocks are overharvested, so we're just fishing them faster than they can reproduce, and if there's not enough left to reproduce, then the population sizes won't be the same, taking us back to that goldfish activity with the tragedy of the commons. And thousands of sharks are killed each year for their fins. So there's a lot of, not only for food or for resources, but there's a lot of animal parts that are considered valuable, like shark fins or rhinoceros horn or elephant tusks, and they are killed for those reasons, and this is called poaching. So it's the illegal killing of wildlife for meat or body parts. So it is legal to kill many different species of animals for food or whatever it might be, but there's a lot of them that are illegal, and those are especially extinct, especially large mammals. Endangered large mammals. The illegal trade for wildlife products has led to steep population declines for many animals, including tigers, rhinoceros, and elephants. So that right there is a bunch of elephant tusks from killed elephants. So half of tiger species that once existed are extinct, and now they live on less than 1% of the land that they historically lived on, because we're changing their habitats and we're really taking away where they live, and we're killing them at the same time. So it is K-selected species are most vulnerable to extinction through overharvesting and poaching and things like that, because or via hunting, because we take a lot longer, we're a K-selected species, we take a lot longer to reproduce. A fish life cycle might be a few months, an elephant life cycle is going to be decades, and so if we are killing them sooner than they can reproduce, that's why their numbers are declining so rapidly. Then we also have invasive species, which we've talked about a lot. So they're non-native species introduced to new environments, usually brought by humans. They could be brought accidentally, like they can escape from a pet trade. They can be carried in like weeds on stalks for different plant species, and they can move aquatically, like the zebra mussels. So here we have some invasive species: the European gypsy moth, the European starling, the emerald cash borer, and the Asian longhorned beetle. So it says that the beetle arrived in shipments of lumber. And so these can arrive accidentally, or they can also arrive intentionally. So, for example, there's a lake in Africa called Lake Victoria, and they purposefully introduced these fish called the Nile perch to increase a food source for the people living there, because there wasn't enough food for them. But then these fish started outcompeting the native species and taking over, and they caused extinction of many other species. And so they did bring the benefit of providing food, but at a really huge ecological cost. So species native to islands are particularly vulnerable to extinction through invasive species, which we've also talked about, because they've spent millions of years evolving separately from everything else. They've been isolated from new parasites, isolated from predators, isolated from competitors, and so they're really specialist species. So as these invasive species arrive, they're particularly vulnerable to extinction. Oh, so there's the Nile perch. So that was the large fish from the Nile River, introduced to Lake Victoria in the 1950s, proceeded to eat its way through hundreds of species of native cichlid fish, driving a number of them extinct. People value the perch as food, but it has radically altered the lake's ecology. So the brown tree snake is another example. The kudzu is a Japanese vine. We talked about that one, and also the Polynesian rat. So the last way that your book talks about that is that humans have changed the planet and are causing loss of biodiversity is through climate change. So as the temperatures changed on the planet, we're causing a lot of animals to shift their ranges to be closer to the poles or higher in altitude. So if animals need to live in a particularly cold type of environment, they're going to move more north where it's colder, or they're going to move up in altitude, up mountains, and so we're causing habitat loss as the temperatures change. So the polar bear is an organism that already happens to live as north as you can go at the North Pole. And as we are warming the North Pole, they have nowhere to go and are especially vulnerable. We'll talk a lot about that when we get to climate change. But basically, they hunt on the ice, and as the ice disappears, they have no more place. They have no place to hunt, so they can't. They're starving. So basically, humans are changing the climate, and we're modifying long-term climate patterns, which have shaped the habitats that animals have evolved in. And we're also, climate change also increases the frequency of extreme weather events, and extreme weather events can cause death and can lead to extinction as well. So for most species, it's multiple factors that are working together to contribute to the decline and endangerment and extinction. So back to the amphibians, they're calling it a perfect storm of causes, from habitat loss to pollution to disease, that's leading to their extinction, because they're particularly susceptible to those sorts of things. And that's the end. So basically the point is that biodiversity is important. That's what we learned in 11.2, and these are all the ways that we are causing loss of biodiversity, which can lead to extinction. And extinction is a natural process that we are rapidly accelerating and that we cannot undo.